to Topic Tuesdays 2.0. I'm Lisa Jolly, and I work with Beginnings of South Carolina. And I'm just hopping in for a few minutes to introduce our speaker, Candace Lindow-Davies. I know you guys had an opportunity to look at her bio. She's here today to talk to us about fostering joy, which is an intentional practice of looking for and encouraging joyful moments between families and caregivers and their child who is deaf and hard of hearing. So we are just really excited to have her. And we also wanted to let you know that she's the director of outreach at Hands and Voices, the national program and at national headquarters. And she's a member of the Fostering Joy Project Core team, which we're just super excited to have her here. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Candace. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. This is Candace. I'm just so pleased to be with you here today. Anytime I get a chance to talk with parents, it just brings me back to my own experience as a parent of a deaf young adult now, but also just back to my experiences running a Minnesota Hands and Voices program and making those phone calls to parents as they were just finding out about their child who is deaf and hard of hearing. So I really appreciate the opportunity to have this chance to talk with parents about a subject that is near and dear to my heart. So I'm going to take just a minute and share my screen and pull up my slides. So give me a moment while I do that. And I'm hoping you can all see that now. If I can get a thumbs up, that would be great. Or maybe a chat, just want to make sure. Yeah, you can see can someone just confirm you can see my slides? That's a yes? Okay, great, perfect, thank you. All right, and so I wanted to just kind of introduce the idea of fostering joy. Fostering joy, like had been mentioned, really is the intention of focusing on the joys and celebrations of having a child who is deaf and hard of hearing. And how we get to that point sometimes is a little bit of a journey. And so I'll describe a little bit about how I got to that point, and then also how we help families get to that point of celebrating their child who's deaf and hard of hearing. So let me advance my slide. Just for a little bit more background about myself and where I've come from. I was a Wisconsin-born girl, so if you talk to me on game day, you're going to probably get my allegiance to my neighbor state to the east, but I live here in Minnesota and have for a very long time and raised my children here. For the past 29 years, been married to the same guy, my husband Ron, and he and I together have two children. My oldest of which, who is a 25-year-old young man. We also have a 21-year-old daughter. And really something you should know about my son, first and foremost, is that he has the most wicked sense of humor you will ever meet. He is our constant source of silliness. He loves puns. I mean, he's just really a great young man, and we're so pleased to have him as a part of our family. That's really what you need to know about him first. Secondly, you would probably want to know that he's my reason for doing this work. He is deaf. He also has other health conditions, pretty significant ones, and some that occurred fairly early on that we knew about. Cerebral palsy and ADHD. And then we found out a couple of years ago, he has some additional health issues, epilepsy, and some endocrine disorders. So he has very severe osteoporosis. So we have to be very careful with this young man. But he really led me to doing this work, and it may be 20 years ago, just after Thanksgiving. So I've been doing this for a while. I had previously founded the Minnesota Hands and Voices Parent Support Program here, and then 4 years ago, I went on to join the national organization Hands and Voices at headquarters level. So I'm still in Minnesota. I'm just working virtually. And like mentioned, I am a founding member of the Fostering Joy core team. And so I'm very pleased to work with other professionals outside of Hands and Voices on this project. So we'll get a little more conversation going about what exactly this is. So really, the basis for this conversation is around the fact that the health, our own health, the health of our children, and the relationships between us are really foundational to the well-being of our family, and really are kind of a bit of a foreshadowing into the success of our children. Because as we're grounded in our own emotional health, then we can be also grounded in our emotional relationships and connection to our own children. And then that in turn helps foster their social and emotional growth and their own perception of themselves. So it's really, really foundational that we talk about this topic. Um, and uh, and so Fostering Joy was actually started as a project among parents and professionals who really felt that parents of deaf and hard of hearing children were kind of under a lot of pressure, quite frankly, feeling that they had so much that they had to learn in a very short amount of time, and for good reason. So we want to make sure we emphasize that the focus on language development, the focus on follow-up appointments, the focus on, a variety of different things are all necessary. But somewhere in all of that also lies the need to simply be a parent, to simply enjoy our child, this child that we were given, and to relish those pure moments of joy. And that really is the foundation for peace and acceptance and bonding and all that emotional development of our child. Um, and that really is the case if they're deaf or hard of hearing or not. I think it's just when there is a identification of being deaf or hard of hearing, those demands on our time and the potential barriers to connecting with our child just becomes even more of a potential. So this quote really points to all the research behind what I'm talking about. And there's lots of research. So I'm going to keep pretty surface level, but know that there's research really that is behind all of the conversations we're having today. So, but what are some of these roadblocks to joyful parenting? I bet you sitting out there are well aware and probably could list off many more than I'm even bringing up here. But just the thought that there's so many appointments really in those early days to run to, that, all of a sudden we go from, being mom to mom advocate. We need to, advocate for our child in different settings and feel like we can represent what their needs are. That pressure to learn how to communicate, that can be, take a lot of time, especially depending on, what our child needs in order to be able to communicate effectively. There's that pressure to be our child's teacher. So suddenly, just interactions with our children, can morph into this, okay, now we need to sit and we need to focus on, intentional delivery of language, and making sure our child is being constantly bathed in language, which they should be. But at the same time, there's that pressure that we need to do it kind of in a teacher format. There might be other health conditions, like in our case, where we had other health issues that we were dealing with and trying to grapple with, and how this all fit together in one little child. And there's finances and needs of other kids. You might be a working parent, and so that has kind of an impact on, kind of your ability to really have time to really focus on connecting and those precious moments with your child. And then this whole added stuff this year, 2020, and all the COVID related issues and online learning and, all the other things that are popping up because of the pandemic and what we're faced with. So these are just, a few of the potential barriers. But again, I bet later you could tell me a few more that come to mind. So really, we wanted to take this conversation about all these things that are going through our mind, and shift it from mitigating what's happening with our child and turning it over and focusing on celebrating. How can we make this a celebration? How can we bring the focus back, on celebrating this precious child that we have? And so that's really our point. But how exactly do you do that? Well, we like to think that it's important to start small and think simple. That, fostering joy, like we had said, is really the intentional practice of looking for and encouraging joyful, precious, simple moments, between ourselves and our child who's deaf and hard of hearing. And the analogy I like to use is the analogy of meditation and breathing, right? Breathing, we all do. I hope we do. We breathe in and we breathe out, right? That happens without our active, conscious thinking about it. But when you put that intention to breathing, that starts to become the step towards meditation. And meditation in itself has its own benefits and unique impact on the body and even your outlook on life. There's a lot of research that goes into this. That practice, when used with intention, can really take it to that next level. And that's really what we hope to do with fostering joy. We hope to take the practice of, being a parent, add that intention to it, and then now bring it to the next level where it's really actually creating a better sense of well-being for ourselves and then in turn for our child. So I would like to share with you, and I'm hoping this will work, and I may need a little feedback, so a little thumbs up from some folks. I'm going to try to share a video, and I'm hoping that it's going to come up right here for you. You may need to turn up. Oops. All right. So just to share a little bit about that video, what we wanted to do was go to our parents and ask them, you're out there with your children, what brings you joy? And so that video is just a short version of a longer video that's actually 7 minutes long, so 7 times longer than that. That really was our way of trying to get the essence of what the Fostering Joy Project is asking parents, what brings you joy with your child who's deaf and hard of hearing? And so those were submissions by parents from all over, letting us know what they felt really brought them joy in their relationship with their child. So that was really fun to see just what everyone's feedback was. So I hope you enjoy it. And I'll give you information about how to see the longer version in just a couple more slides. So now that you've seen a couple ideas from parents in kind of a video format, I thought I'd kind of launch into some ideas, again, really generated from parents, because, this isn't just our project. This, we feel, is a shared project amongst all the families that consider themselves part of the Fostering Joy group. But these are their ideas about, practical, simple things you can do that can add joy to your life and to your experience with your child. And one really is just to deliberately schedule time. And I know it sounds so silly, and I hope some of you are already doing this on your own, but just like you write in an appointment with the doctor or you write in your work schedule, you write in those times where you're going to just take a break and spend some time with your child or children, depending on what your situation allows. So really just scheduling time. And then sometimes that can be difficult, right? Where that time is just carved out just for fostering joy and there's nothing else connected to it. So if that's the case, you can build off of activities that are already happening. I know in my family situation, I felt like I was just being, going from one appointment to the next. And I realized pretty quickly, well, wait a minute, we have an appointment at this, provider, and then we have an appointment over here at this provider, but we've got downtime in between. And literally, I think I might have like sat in the car or the waiting room or whatever. And it was like, this is silly. We all love to be outside. The kids need to be released from sitting in, confined spaces. Let's find a different place to go run around between those two appointments. And we literally did. And it was kind of fun because it was very close to our state capitol and some of the state government buildings. And the grounds are beautiful. And there's sculptures and all sorts of, things to go look at. And sometimes we'd even go into the capitol and we'd look at the portraits of all the governors and their funny hair or whatever it was. But we just wound up making it like, okay, there's our time when we're stuck doing these things, but what can we do in between that maybe would be kind of fun? And so the kids actually kind of got used to, thinking of places where we could go and we could run around. And it just was a good, much better use of our time than sitting in a waiting room. So and another tip that was given to us too was just get outside. There is so much, and we all know now, especially, with the pandemic and being kind of locked up, that wow, sitting in front of a computer all day, just the act of going out to get the mail is kind of a nice change of pace, right? But with our children, just taking our kids outside, and even if it means exploring the back of the backyard, what's under that tree back there? What is that? Oh my gosh, could we make a fairy house? Could we lure fairies to our backyard under this tree? Well, what would a fairy house look like? Just little activities like that, but just getting outside is so therapeutic. And then aside from your child, just like that old advice that you're given to put that mask over your own mouth if you're on a plane and before you put the mask onto your child, same thing. We need to rejuvenate as people too. And so the idea of just taking some respite time for yourself and whatever little moment that is, and it doesn't have to be complicated, doesn't have to involve sitters, could be locking yourself in the bathroom for 10 minutes and, just having a moment to yourself, or maybe slipping in a bath, God forbid, after the children go to bed, but just kind of filling your cup back up so that when you do take this time to be engaged with your child, you feel like you've had a little bit of time to steel yourself up for the day and all that demands. And then something I find to be helpful whenever I'm trying to develop a new habit, and we hope that this might be something you look into, is having a joy habit, is finding a buddy. I am much more accountable to go walking if I make a deal with my neighbor that we're going to meet outside and we're going to walk together, right? I'm accountable to her. And just like that idea, having someone who's also hoping to kind of infuse more joy in raising their children, if they're agreeing to this project, hey, then they're your joy buddy. Then maybe you can check in, maybe it's once a week, and you just kind of tell each other what you did that week, that you took some steps to try to infuse joy with your child. So find a joy buddy. And then journaling. I like to write, and I like sometimes to write in little snippets. And so having a journal of where you can put information down that kind of either reflects on what you plan to do, or I love when I sit at the end of the day and actually journal about what I have done. And it just makes me go to sleep with some peace, saying, yes, I did. I stopped for 5 minutes and I really, focused in on how well my son just, put together his little, meal for himself, or, whatever it might be that I want to just really kind of focus and just celebrate that. Just writing that down could just be a positive thing, and you can go back and reflect on it. So that can be really good exercise. And we actually, have research that shows that expressing gratitude or celebrating these moments actually rewires your brain to be more positive and to see things with a more positive outlook. Whereas sometimes, when things kind of aren't going well, you can kind of get in that negative kind of downward spiral where you're always seeing things more negative and, oh, I can't get myself out of this. This actually has been shown to kind of reframe and rewire your brain to think more positively. So it's a good exercise. And then I promised to provide some resources. So we do have lots of resources, and I hope that this information, I think the slides can certainly be sent off if they haven't already to you guys. But just to know that we have built Fostering Joy resources so that people can really use all this information on their own. They don't have to come to anyone or ask permission. It's all there and available. And we're adding more and more resources as we go along. So we created a Fostering Joy webpage. And so this link will get you to the webpage so you can see what resources we have there. We also have created a Fostering Joy Facebook group. The Facebook group is for parents. So just for parents. So you have to be the parent of a deaf or hard of hearing child in order to join the group. And the group really is focused solely on fostering joy. If you have questions or have barriers or challenges, we do refer you back to your parent organizations to really support you in that way. So this really is strictly about fostering joy. So it's a nice little break from the rest of the world because it's very positive where parents are sharing what's gone really well with their kiddo recently, and they're just endearing. We did create a spot for professionals though, and that is our Fostering Joy Instagram account. So if you're on Instagram, or if you aren't yet, check that out because we pull a lot of information from the Facebook group with permission, and we'll post it on the Instagram account too. And then we have tip sheets about how to foster joy, and they're directed at parents, so they're directed at you with ideas, some of which I share today, but then there's more tips on there as well. And we've been so pleased that we've been able to get them translated into Spanish. The Somali one is just about to be done. I've heard Arabic, French, Urdu, Hmong, Portuguese, I think. Anyway, we've got a bunch of them coming, so hopefully they'll be helpful for more and more families. So look for those to be added soon. And then in addition to the Fostering Joy information, we also have resources for parents who are deaf, have children who are deaf and hard of hearing and have additional health concerns, so Deaf Hard of Hearing Plus, because we do feel that sometimes that little extra nuance does add extra complexity with families. And so we do have some resources specifically geared towards families who have that additional concern. And so with that, I just wanted to invite you to join the movement, because all these tips so far are directed at you as a parent to foster joy with your own family and your own child. But we also recognize that you as a parent play a really important role as being a potential role model for others. So when we were talking about this whole project, we thought, wow, this isn't just a little project. This is kind of a movement. And why don't we have people join us in our cause? So we decided, well, let's give it a name. When someone wants to join this and thinks this is a good idea, they could be a joy ambassador. So we are inviting you to consider being a joy ambassador. And I'll tell you a little bit about what exactly that means. And it's probably not as difficult or as involved as you might think. So what do joy ambassadors do? Really kind of three simple things. When you're telling your parent's story, and if you're like me, you're out in the grocery store, or maybe back in the day when you're at the mall, maybe not now, and you happen to see a kid who's maybe got hearing aids, or you see a mom signing with a baby, and you're like, wait a minute, I think that guy might have some technology or whatever, and your radar goes up, right? You're like, oh, there's a little kiddo, like my little kiddo back in the day. Consider, saying hello and introducing yourself. And when you're telling your story, like we often tell our story to other parents, just remember to always sprinkle in that bit of joy. that thing about your child who's deaf and hard of hearing that just lights you up. As you noticed when I gave my introduction, before I told you about Luke being deaf and that he had other health issues, I told you about his wicked sense of humor. And so what I'm trying to do is kind of model that's something you can do easily, is just talk about your child and their talent and their unique, whatever it is, characteristic that just lights you up. But you can simply do that when you're telling your story to another parent. If you want to take it a step further, you certainly can write about it. You can share your story, maybe in an article for maybe a local communication that you have there within the organizations that you're connected with for deaf and hard of hearing or having a child with additional health issues. But just consider, writing your story and then also remembering to kind of add that component of joy about what it is about your child that is such a blessing to you and your family. And to talk about their strengths, because sometimes we get so focused on what they don't have that, we tend to forget, wait a minute, what do they have? What did they come with automatically? Or what have they developed that you just want to share with other people, and really kind of make sure that you emphasize that, because that's really where the magic is, right? And above and all, but beyond that too, we'd love for you to tell your story at a higher level, if you're willing. I could imagine that Beginnings and Hands and Voices and your EDDY program, they're all looking for parents to tell their story about their journey and what they've experienced. And when you do that, just simply incorporate something that shares the celebration of your child. And the more we do that, the more we practice that, I think the more natural it's going to become. And so when someone wants an update about your kiddo, at the holidays or, at a birthday party or whatever, just kind of focusing on that positive part of what's going on. And you can certainly share the challenges too. We're not saying to, completely gloss over that, but at the same time, really focus on the fact that they have so much to offer. And I think that will help, and just in general, make sure that our children, and then later our adult children, are seen as being not just capable, but just a huge addition to whatever field or career or endeavor they might pursue. So that is really what I had to talk about today, about the essence of fostering joy, and some ideas about how to do that in your own home, how to do that out in the community, and maybe even do that in systems. But I would love to hear more about your own families, and if you wouldn't mind, I think we're going to turn on cameras and things, and people can start sharing. But really, what strategies do you use to foster joy in your own home already, or what are you inspired to do? So I'd love to hear more. So I'm gonna stop sharing my slides, and then I'll